Volleyball podcast. My name is Mark Burrick. Here on this podcast, we talk about everything that has to do with getting better at beach volleyball. And today, specifically, we're going to talk about bad coaches. We're going to put a few coach archetypes on blast, and we're going to talk about how what coaches normally do to ruin practices, ruin players, how a lot of coaches are really wasting time in the gym and on the sand, and good ways and easy ways to fix them. And special guest with us today, better at beach coach and friend, former NCAA Division One coach, Chad Mercado. Very nice, very nice. Chad, what's going on, man?
Living the dream out in California.
Hell yeah, you're sitting in my garage gym. It's been treating us nice. Our biceps are firing.
I don't. We didn't even do chest, and I don't. My chest is sore. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but we did back and buys, and here we are.
Nice, nice. So you came out to California. You were coaching a juniors tournament. How did that go? What happened? And give us, you know what? Maybe just start by introducing yourself, a little bit about your history from playing, because you're still playing professionally indoor and coaching. So let's just give the audience a little insight into who Chad is.
Awesome. Yeah. They call me Chatty Daddy. I'm from Orlando, Florida, out on the East Coast. I actually went to school at Lee's McRae, small school up in North Carolina. Graduated from there in 2011 and started playing professionally in Puerto Rico. Won I guess it would be a league championship. Very first year out of college was really awesome. Got to play with Scott Tazinski from the 2008
National
United
team,
States.
yeah. Haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah, so he got to see his gold medal. That was pretty cool. But I just remember watching him play and watching that whole team. That was Lloyd Ball and all them, and it was an honor. It was really cool to be brought up during that time. But yeah, and then after Puerto Rico, I actually moved out here towards Riverside to coach with California Baptist, where I was training with the team there. We finished fifth in the AV in the poll, AVCA poll, men's poll that year in 2013, and trained and got a little bit better and went out to Holland, which was always a dream of mine to play overseas in Europe. And let's see, I got the
That's such a
top point score.
Holland, the Dutch, the Netherlands. There's not too many countries that have that many names.
Exactly.
But they're such like a volleyball powerhouse. It's crazy. They just keep turning out, first of all, great beach teams kind of out of nowhere. They are per capita one of the tallest countries in the world, if not the tallest. And their indoor teams are so legit. I think especially on the women's side, they have a tremendous indoor women's team. Was there anything different about their coaching culture or their playing culture that you could pick out as you noticed, oh, this is probably what makes them great? Because you were working for Gold Medal Squared, which is a company that we both worked for, where they develop coaches for indoor, and that was created by the last 3 decades of Olympic coaches in the U.S. So you had a lot of experience in the American circuit of coaching. So was there anything different in Holland that you thought they did differently that was good or significantly worse than the U.S. did?
Can't put my finger on anything specifically, but I think their philosophy is the training as well. I don't think they believe in rest as much. I'll give you that. It's pretty much train, and there wasn't like these like we have now, kind of like, okay, here's a recovery day with like active stretching, and this it was just kind of play like nonstop. We wouldn't do as many specific technical drills. We would kind of just jump into more gameplay or game scenarios where it's like triple block out of system. Okay, here's the toss from out of system. Boom, you're going on a triple block and play it out. Whereas, in the United States, sometimes, especially like in the off season, we are going with like, okay, how do I break down a specific skill and spend a lot, an hour or two on that. And Yeah, that's the biggest thing is it's about more reps, game like reps. And I don't know if that's a Holland thing. I don't know if that's a professional thing. I know from what I've heard from other professionals, that's kind of the idea behind it. A lot more gameplay and a lot more situational volleyball. But yeah, that was the experience over in Holland.
Yeah, you kind of hope at some point that as a pro athlete, somebody who's getting paid to play, that you should be technically sound. Technique can always get better, can always improve, but at that level, when everybody's kind of physically similar, uh, it probably comes down to more mental and more just automation in terms of reps. But I know, for example, like in beach, the, Americans get kind of made fun of because of how much talking we do and how much explaining through each thing, and that our
Yeah,
players really want to just understand things. In I think the Brazilian style of coaching is just non-stop reps. You see any film from a Brazilian practice, and you've got literally six coaches on two guys just throwing in different balls and getting as many touches as you can until you just maybe unconsciously memorize that touch without needing to worry about the technique.
yeah, and it's all cognitive. Like it's all like because when you're getting that many touches and that many reps, your body's thinking, okay, I know in this situation I've already done this 1,000 times. Instead of talking about it, they've actually done it, right?
Mm,
So it's like you're going through that drill and you're like, oh wow, like you don't even have to think about it. And that's kind of another form of training, or that's a awesome form of training where your body's saying muscle memory wise and cognitive wise, or mentally you're thinking, oh, this guy's going here, so I need to put the ball here. It's not even a thought. It's
right.
just it just happens.
Yeah, it's always interesting because it's so hard. It's so hard to study those or put those into statistics of which form of coaching is better or best. Like, can you coach an athlete without talking? If you read The Inner Game of Tennis, the guy who wrote that, he said some of my best coaching years and some of the best times I worked with an athlete was when I refused to talk. I would just demonstrate and then have him try to mimic, or demonstrate in slow motion and then have the players try to mimic. And I think a lot of players, and we're going to get into this in a little bit here, but I think a lot of coaches definitely end up talking way too much. And I've witnessed it. I've probably been that guy at a few different
I,
points.
I, I know I have. I know I have.
Yeah. uh, so it's just it's trying to find that balance of repetition. Where do we need to rep? The whole versus part conversation, like, is a whole skill and a whole point, are those different? Because when we talk about whole versus part, there is some significant science behind the idea of progression drills, where you break down one part of a technique and you only work on that you won't acutely, you'll feel better at that single part, but you won't develop the entire skill as fast as you would over time as if you trained the entire skill. So if we're just talking about, let's say, like an approach for an arm swing, if you
Yeah,
throw your arms back and you just only work on throwing your arms back and you just work on firing them, is that going to make you better at an approach if you don't take 4 steps, approach and jump? The science says no. The science says it won't,
yeah,
because you have to incorporate that into the whole skill. And I'm a case study in that, because coaching in Sweden while I was playing pro, I realized that I was wasting my arm on like these 15-year-old juniors. I was just hammering them all day. And I was like, my arm's gassed. So I said, I got to learn how to hit lefty. So at least I got some energy for my own matches. And
sure.
I ended up developing some pace lefty standing on the ground. And I could hit consistently and accurate with my left arm, and I could serve. I still ended up getting surgery on my right shoulder. So I was like, you know what? Fine. Let's play lefty. Let's jump and hit. So when I would jump and hit after 7 months of standing and hitting lefty, it was hopeless. Like, I couldn't contact the
So
ball. I was slapping at it. So this one, like, little case study of you're practicing a significant part of the drill, which is just an arm swing, by being on the ground and swinging. That
Yeah.
made me no better in the air than day one would have been. And I think people need to understand that, and we're going to get into that here in a couple minutes. But that whole versus part, and then in terms of skill, does that carry over to a point? You know, if you're practicing passing and you're receiving it from over the net, can you get better just by doing the pass, or do you need to do the whole pass, set, hit every time in order to get better at scoring points? And that's something that I don't think has been studied.
Yeah. I think with the part and the skill, I think you have to learn like the majority, like you were talking about first, and then you can always revisit and go back and fine tune things.
Yeah.
But you can't just start fine tuning everything and then 20 years later be like, oh, I finally got it. Like that's not going to be realistic. You got to learn the broad skill, so to speak, or like you said, like I got to be able to pass, but right after that you got to be able to hit, right? So so like you got to learn how to pass into hit, so that way you're focused, or when you are passing, you're not just solely focused on your approach or your whatever skills coming next. You can kind of glue them together. I don't know if you need to do all like bump set and actually hit though. I don't know if you actually have to, if you're working on the footwork transitioning into your approach. I think that's a big thing. And then hitting, I think, would be separated after that, if we're getting into that kind of topic.
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
like gold medal squared, right? The whole, that was in the coaching manual, is what's the best way to learn passing? Pass, set,
Yep.
hit. What's the best way to
Yeah.
learn setting? Pass, set, hit. What's the best way to learn hitting? Pass, set, hit. They really wanted you to incorporate the full actions on your side of the net in order to improve in something. I think there's definitely a ton of value in that. But
Yeah.
what we do want to talk about now, and we'll list them off. I'll go for the first one, and in the back of your head, you just start coming up with some things that you've seen. Because could you tell us just a few of the schools that you've coached at, and what you're doing in terms of juniors right now?
Yeah, I coached men's with California Baptist University out of Riverside. Like I said, we finished top 5 in 2013. It was our first year going into NCAA volleyball from NAIA. I think we swept UCLA that year. We split with a bunch of teams, USC, all the MPSF, old school MPSF teams. And then I also was at the University of Florida for 2 years under Mary Wise and Dave Booz, indoor females. And that was a great experience, but learning. So they don't run a gold medal square system. And so I'm somewhere in between. I played under gold medal square, coached, led camps, and then I also learned from a different brilliant mind at University of Florida. And so I kind of mesh and see a little bit of both. I don't think there's any one way to do anything, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's that quote, right, from Bruce Lee. Take what's essential, discard what's unimportant, and then make it yours. Yeah,
Yep.
and I don't know if that's the exact quote, but Hayden said it on a couple podcasts ago. And
Yeah.
I think it's important for everybody to evolve that, to take what works, especially what works for you. I think the problem is that people don't get a full look at what works for them. They get a perception of what they think is the problem or the solution, and that's we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's start running down the list here of
Okay.
how to waste your practices. So I was privy to a juniors practice that when it started off, I was like, yes, these people know what they're doing. I loved it. Their warm up was all volleyball moves, like lateral lunges. They did these Spider-Man lunges where they lunged forward and they laid out. So they're like little girls getting push-up moves, deep lunges, and volleyball moves constantly. And then the first 10 minutes started off with them basically jogging back and forth, passing to themselves, and then setting to themselves and getting some one-handed touches. And I know that's not a whole skill, but in my mind, when I look at a practice, I say, what's the reps per minute? That is the really one of the top key factors that I see as far as a successful practice. What is the reps per minute of each athlete. And there's a very simple way for coaches to measure that. Once you start your drill, or even if you have somebody on the side, follow one athlete and follow your watch and see how many times they've touched a ball. And if you have lines, if you have waiting periods, if you have coaches who are either standing around doing nothing or feeding way too much, and you're counting and you're saying, this one athlete's only getting one touch every 2 minutes. By the end of the practice, they're going to have 60 attempts in 2 hours. Now for volleyball, like you can definitely maximize that. So this practice, it started off with tons of passing to ourselves, setting against the wall, some arm swings against the wall. And I was like, this is great. This is going to be a tremendous practice. And then it quickly devolved into one coach who had 3 assistant coaches, just kind of standing and talking, not really doing anything, and one coach who was feeding. So there was a line of players, which meant that somebody had to wait a little over 2.5 minutes before her single touch. When you had more than enough balls, you had access to 3 other people who can. What adult can't do this? Like punt a ball out of their hands. And so this one line scenario was wasting. I said I could immediately 4x this practice in terms of effectiveness and skill, because one of the things that we have in our camp coaching manual is you do not see 1 court and 12 players. When you see that, you need to see 4 courts or more and 4 groups of 3 players. As soon as you start chopping those down into small groups, then you can 4x the amount of reps. So instead of, for all those coaches out there, when you see a big group of players and 1 coach or 1 court, 1 net, no. That 1 net in indoor, that can be up to 6 courts, really. You can divide it in thirds, but to be comfortable with space and everything, you can divide that and it can be 4 courts, 4 little mini courts, more mini sections. Then you can divide those players and they can all do that. And what I didn't know at the time when I was playing in high school is that my high school coach was a master of this. The first thing we did every single practice was triangle. And our reps per minute in the first 30 minutes of every single practice in our high school was through the roof compared to any other coaches. And that's a small private school medium private school that went to state championships every single year. So if you're looking at reps per minute, get yourself out of lines, get your team out of lines. Look at one player, count their reps in 2 minutes. If it's under 1 rep per minute, fix it. Find a way. Put them on a wall. Get them swinging at something. Get them jumping. But to stand in line is an absolute waste of a player's time unless they're in a recovery from a max effort and they're in a gym. Like, that's the only reason why I would say standing around is okay.
Yeah.
So that's number 1 for me, is reps per minute and how do you fix that? What's your number 1 or pet peeve or things where you see coaches kind of miss?
Well, kind of tags along with that. It's like, if we break up into pieces, just to quickly touch on that, is like, if we have one side, let's say we have pin hitters on one side and middles on another, usually the setter is going to get that middle. But they're hitting different angles. So like the pins can hit down the line, and then the middles will be hitting 31s, whatever. They're going 2 sides going. And then there's also defenders there getting reps. So you're basically breaking it down into 4s, 4 sides of the court where everyone's getting reps, kind of like what you mentioned. I think.
So you're saying like instead of people hitting from the antennas and just hitting into a high open court, completely open court, you can throw a defender down on that other side. They're getting defensive opportunities and looks, and you force your players to hit line, or you force them to hit diagonals. It's funny because on the court next to that one that I was just talking about, they had their grown-up girls who were crazy athletic and just banging. But it was the same thing. They had 3 lines of people, each waiting for their turn, with one setter hitting on a completely open court. So I saw like missed opportunities at reps, like you're talking about.
For sure. And you can always switch that up as like, the outside starts hitting line. Okay, well, now they're going to hit angle. So the person sits an angle. And then you just make a different middle call, make a different middle set or anything like that. And you can do that with a big beach group as well. It's not just indoor. If you have a group of 10 or 12, you can split up how this works. Like you said, by breaking it up into fours. So biggest pet peeve. Whew. I hate shagging, honestly. So I like having one of the groups kind of make sure that there's something so it's continuous, where we don't have to stop every 7-8 minutes. Somebody's working hard throughout the drill, high intensity, and then they're getting a breather, and that breather is an active rest or recovery where they're shagging and making it a system where you're continuously going. You're not having to stop,
Yeah.
10, 15, 20 times throughout practice.
And I think that's one of those like group things, like group mindset, because that would almost go against what we just said with his reps per minute. But that dead time in between, that's going to cost you even more reps per minute, right? So if you have to collect balls all of a sudden, then no one's getting reps per minute. So if one of your groups can be collecting, making sure that they don't. And I would say we don't always have them, but for any parents and coaches out there, enlist your parents and your assistant coaches and say,
there you go.
Hey parents, would anyone like to just block the balls and make sure that they get back to here so that we can get the girls some more reps? 100%. There's going to be at least one dad. Like I know I would be in there saying like, yeah, I completely understand this and I'll shag balls.
And like you said before too, there was 3 coaches that weren't doing anything. So if that's the case, then they can stand on the M line and make this a little easier. And then you wouldn't have to have, that would be the small group, right? And say, okay, throw that in. But it drives me nuts.
Drives me nuts. All right. So we're shagging. We're talking about reps per minute. I'm going to jump into our coach manual here. And one thing that I think coaches kind of ruin themselves on, it might come from a lack of preparation or a generosity of knowledge, but you have to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
If you give an athlete advice and you say, hey, our hitting is going to get better today, right? Because you went home and you worked on the double arm lift with your approach. So we're ready to rock. And that's your focus today. Great. You've given that athlete one focus. And then as soon as you jump into the first like scrimmage drill, you comment of why he or she should have been on the line instead of into the diagonal. And you're commenting now on her defense because she just lost that point. It's you as a coach have to focus your brain and your words in terms of your goal for 1, the team, of course, and then 2, the individual player. Because your individual player might have unique goals compared to your team, right? So you have to stop talking about everything for every reason. And it doesn't come from a point of you being a bad coach or being hard on players. It's I have all of this information in here and I want them all to know everything that I know. But that's not how learning works. You have to focus on one chapter at a time and lock that in and allow that player to work on it and to focus on it. And it's your job actually to focus their brain, because if your brain is scattered, 100% your players' brains are going to be scattered, right? That's why like dogs act like their owners. It's very similar with players. If you got a scattered brain and you're thinking and talking about all these different things, and then you get into the game, you say, why aren't we doing the thing that we worked on? It's like, oh yeah, we have to get back to that because I thought you were mad at me for jumping on the line instead of diagonal. So for me, it's focus, plan, and make sure that you give one goal per athlete. And that's where your words go when you talk to that athlete.
Yeah, it goes back to like your example of reading. If you skim through something, you're not going to retain all the information that you might see a couple things here and there, but you're going to have to go back and read it, which is going to be like practice. You're going to have to go back and practice that skill again and again and again, because it's not going to stick. It's just going to kind of be there like, hey, we did hitting today, but what'd you learn? I think I was digging, and then no, what'd you learn about hitting? Go back. It's like, well, yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely agree.
Well, we like to kind of one thing that we do at the camps is we always say to the players, okay, rate yourself on focus and rate yourself on performance. Did you focus on what you needed to focus on? And usually that's the first key, because if you don't have an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 in terms of did you actually focus on it, on what you're supposed to work on for this practice, they're like, shoot, no, I didn't. I started like thinking about defense and my positioning and like where my hands were instead of what my actual goal was. And so you need to have that rating as a coach.
Yep.
Look at your players and
And
say, did you focus? And that's also for the coaches, right? Like a head coach can look at all their assistant coaches, especially in a big D1 program, and say, hey, coaches, rate your level of focus on your feedback.
yep. And I mean, it is tough because as a coach, you're thinking, okay, I need to get all these things done, and our first match is a month from now or whatever. And so you are kind of scattered. You're like, oh my God, like I'm thinking the beginning of the season, right? You're like, okay, I got Sydney, this, blah, 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 go to Luhu, and we need to be able to do all this with them. And it's like, okay, that can be overwhelming if you try to do it all within that month. You got to realize it's a season, and you got to realize it's a year or whatever, however long your season is. And it's like, okay, slowly build up, enjoy the process, get there through a process. Don't just look at like, hey, I need her to hit 10-foot line. Okay, she's not hitting 10-foot line. Well, she's not digging it. What happened to 10-foot line? You keep going back and forth. You have more time than you think, and I think that's for younger coaches. You see that, you're like, okay, all that information's out. I did my job, and it's like, okay, well, you have all this time, and now they're scattered when you could have just broken it down slower. Take a deep breath. Okay, we're going to work through it, and then not just teach them, but let them memorize it. Let their body memorize it. Let them kind of catch up to where you're at. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, you just came from a juniors tournament, right? So
Correct.
I'm sure that as a coach, as a long-term player, you get the opportunity to look at, I don't know, maybe 100 teams a year, and kind of in the back of your mind decide why the other coach is screwing up and how you're going to beat them, and kind of, egotistically, like how you're doing a better job than them. So can you pick out anything that you see specifically at tournaments that coaches are doing too much or too little of? Maybe
I'll
you
call
can think of something
myself.
specific. Oh, I like this.
I'll call myself out. I can get pretty passionate on the sidelines, and I think it's funny because I was watching. So we are in the third set. We had beaten this team before earlier in the year, and now this is our fourth match of day one to get into gold. This is 18's nationals, by the way, JOs. And I'm trying to think here. I see him kind of losing it or getting really upset and looking over. And I'm just kind of like, okay. And I'm quiet, but he looks really mad. I don't know why he was mad. Like, he looked mad at me. And so I was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to play cool this time. And sure enough, our team slowly came back as he was getting a little upset or like mad and all that stuff and a little bit too fiery and ticked off looking. It was just the body language. It wasn't even like he wasn't yelling too much. It just looked like he was just angry with the world. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes I might look like that. And it's like, oh, I gotta check myself. And so in that moment, I fixed it. And I was just very calm and quiet, but I need to be able to do that a little bit more. But your body language is a huge thing when you're coaching from the sidelines in the games. And it's hard, especially if you really do care and there's a lot of passion there for wanting to win. You just got to kind of take that deep breath and go back and realize what's important. And for them, the players on the court, it's like, all right, I look over at my coach. If he's kind of looking like that, you got to kind of check yourself, because then they're going to feel a little bit anxious or a little bit of anger or whatever energy you're giving off.
You remember I don't I'm not sure if he's still the head coach or not, but the Brazilian head coach. Um, is it Rezengi?
Um, yeah, the Sutter's dad, Bruno's
Yeah,
dad. Yeah,
yeah. I think it's Rezengi is his last name, like Rezendi. Uh, here's a guy who's just literally screaming every point, jumping up and down on the sides of course, like super fiery and going nuts. Both happy and both mad, and like, dude wears his heart on his sleeve, 100%.
yeah,
And you look at something like that, and you say, like, man, this guy's how is he getting away with this? Like, as a leader who is just up and down, yet still has top three team in the world every year.
yeah,
Um, where is that disconnect? Because I was also trained on a similar thing. Like, a leader should be calm, like, straightforward, nice and calm, but a little bit inspirational. But you can't lose yourself to your emotions, and you also don't want your players to lose yourself to the emotions.
yeah. I think it's totally he could get away with it just because of culture. I think our culture is a lot different than Brazil, where they're, a little bit more animated. Even playing, like if you go watch their players, they're getting rambunctious like
Mm,
throughout, and it kind of matches, I guess, in a way, and they understand each other. Whereas especially if we're dealing with youth, we've got to carry this like I'm the general kind of like everything's okay feel, and
yeah.
nothing phases me. Um, our culture just wants to feel. I think our girls and boys just kind of want to feel safe. I would say when I'm coaching my girls, they want to feel, hey, I feel comfortable, and now because I'm comfortable, I can play.
Yeah.
They feel uncomfortable, it gets kind of like, okay, I don't know what to do now because I'm worried about too many things.
I think that's probably the most interesting point, is that maybe the coaching style has to match the cultural style. Um,
Sure.
kind of like Russian, almost Eastern Bloc uh, coaching and players at our camps, where we're like, this is great, guys. We're having a good time. We're on vacation. We literally have like the Russian, the Russians from Seattle who are like, you need to tell me how bad I'm sucking. I'm so tired
Feed
of
it in.
hearing everything good that I have. They're like, you need to tell me what's wrong so that I can fix it. And that's
Yeah.
kind of their culture, like, what's wrong. So they feel most natural in that environment. And then that's where they improve. I think US has definitely leaned towards it, like you said, safety and comfort. Um, and so you can't make somebody feel bad, and that will, because culturally that's what's happened in our country. I think as far as coaching style, that has to now match with the culture, for better or for worse. And maybe the Brazilian, where they love their emotions, and they express them fully. I think that's also uh, probably accepting, the culture's accepting of that coaching leadership style. So maybe you're right. It is 100% a cultural thing, and you have to understand that. Um, and if you do want to coach emotionally, then you're going to have to create that culture within your club and say, this is what we want. This is where we're at. So
Yep.
maybe that's the right direction there. And there are tons of different emotional leaders in every facet of the world, and every genre. They're not all just this stoic one emotion type person, but I think you got to figure out the culture that's going to make your girls comfortable or your guys comfortable.
Yeah. And like research, just check out some leadership videos on YouTube, or um, different people, influencers, all that stuff. They kind of give you an idea of like what they've gone through, and they're like, all right, I could try this style, or this doesn't work with the team, or okay, this is a little too harsh, but this didn't really get my point across. This was too
Mhm.
fluffy, and you just kind of mess with it and find that balance. It's all
Yeah,
about balance.
yeah. We all just want to say, like, listen, your passing sucks. So here's how you're gonna fix it. But instead, you got to say, good job on having your hands together early. Looks like your elbows were completely closed and your fist was hitting your face, but we can fix that together.
Yeah,
There's a lot
the
of kind of
sandwich.
softness. Yeah, there's that sandwich,
Yeah,
and it takes longer. But currently, at least where our culture is at. I think you're right. We have to fix our coaching in order to do that, especially if we want to survive and thrive in a club world where we're going to have a new set of parents every year, and where the entire culture is telling everybody that we need to feel very safe and very comfortable, and that it's not okay if somebody's unhappy, which we can get into that in another episode. But that's where we're at right now, and I think coaches
Yeah.
need to recognize that their emotion, their feeling, their personality might not match with the rest of culture or the acceptance, of a large contingent of parents, and players.
For
So
sure.
yeah, somebody's looking on Instagram for 4 hours a day and they're getting coached 2 hours a day. The culture that they see on Instagram is what they're going to think is right,
Yeah. Yeah. No, for
which is
sure.
kind of terrible. But
Yeah.
all right, um, moving on. So we talked about making sure that people get their focus and that they stay focused. Here's another one that I absolutely despise, and it didn't start out like this because I thought it was valid. Explaining drills. At no level in my volleyball experience has a verbal explanation of a drill ever been faster than grabbing somebody by the shoulders, putting them in the position that they need to be in,
Yeah.
calling somebody out by name, saying, Jessica, you're there. Sam, you're there. Frank, you're here. Frank, you pass to Jessica. Jessica, you set to Sam. Sam, catch it and give it to Frank. Do that demonstration, the full drill. Do the demonstration while talking about it so people see it. For whatever reason, in most people's minds, the verbal explanation of a volleyball drill never makes sense. And if we're talking like our camps and clinics where sometimes somebody has never even been in a volleyball drill, you, you have no hope. You're going to waste half of your practice again talking. Like, let's say you're coaching 10 or 12-year-olds, right? You're going to waste half of that practice just talking about the drill and trying to get their rotations right. Stop. Just show them and then insert them. I think that through my experience, that has been the fastest way. So now I never explain a drill before I show it. I either
Yeah.
show it and explain it at the same time, or I just show it.
Start with showing for sure. 100%. You sit there and you'll waste 5 minutes. Then you'll go, and then because you said something when you were explaining it and not when you were demonstrating it, then there's another question after that. So sometimes there's 3 or 4 minutes after you've already just demonstrated. So now you've done a demonstration sandwich where you're
Mhm.
verbal, demonstrate verbal, and it's like 15 minutes doesn't sound like a good idea for practice. If you have a 2-hour practice window, like that is not essential, not efficient.
And then you've also explained 3 different positions usually, right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
now somebody has to think about, what position am I in? Oh, wait, what were the instructions for that position? Where do I go after I'm in that position? And then they don't even know to go there.
Yep.
So that's a struggle that we see, and we use a lot of names now where it's, like I said, Chad, you're here, you're setting for the next 2 minutes. All you have to worry about is delivering perfect sets. Go, instead of these complicated rotations.
Yeah.
Rotations do not need to exist within drills. Do a drill for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, then put them into their next spots.
Know
This
your
whole
role.
idea of automated rotations, I think it breaks practices completely.
Yeah, I get the idea, like, because you're getting a lot of different visuals or different reps from different spots. But I agree. I think you can focus slow. If you're gonna say focus solely on a skill or one thing, then you should focus on one position or one part space on the court, one place on the court. So that way you can focus on that. Hey, I'm digging to my right because I'm right side. Okay, great.
Mm.
Boom. Here's my dig. Here's my dig. Here's my dig. Ball goes to my left. I dig it. I might not, but I'm focused on my right. Focus on my right. It makes it a lot easier instead of going back from the right and then going over to the left and saying, well, now I can't focus, I can't do it on my right. Doesn't make any sense. So if you're going to break down the skill or focus on one skill, I think it's the same idea as letting somebody get multiple reps in the same position or the same place on the court.
Yeah. And if you think you got a mini line, like let's say one person's serving, one person's passing, one person's setting, and you don't want to do the passer to setter to server, like you don't want to do that rotation. Yeah, there's still going to be a rotation, but you could just rotate. Okay, you three are the passers. You're going
Yeah,
to alternate passing for the next minute. Then they don't have to think about who shags what ball. What about when a shank happens or the ball goes everywhere? It becomes a headache. And
yeah.
I think less rotation is going to make the volleyball world a much better place.
And that, I mean, if you look at like the classic servers versus passers, it's 10 balls, right? It's like, okay, you have 4 people serving. You have a
Mhm.
setter if they want to get reps, or a coach, counting the pass, how good the pass is. And then you have 4 passers. And it's like, okay, the 3 are on, 1 comes on, and you're just rotating. And you're on that same side though. After the 10 balls, after you do a little consequence, you do whatever you need to do. And then you switch. Hey, Lucy, come over here and switch with this passer. Now she gets the reps and she can go over there. The other person gets the reps serving, and they're consistently in that spot where it's quick and they know the role.
Right.
So, yes.
You got any more in the top of your head? I got one right now.
I think don't just say what, but like if you're gonna take time to explain something, don't say the what so much. Like, hey, I need you to jump higher, or give them a why, or give them a how, instead of just saying the obvious. Hey, you need to get lower on that ball. Like, well, yeah, the ball went, it hit the ground. Yeah, I need to get lower. Okay, she knows that, or he knows that. Like, it's not an issue. It's like how or why. How do I do that? Oh, well, take a big forward lunge step and get a little bit lower to the ground. So that way, when you get to the ground, you can collapse and be soft onto the ground instead of dropping from 5 feet up in the air. And that'll make you want to do it more. And then obviously keep it quick. But if you give them a quick why, a quick how, that goes a long way, instead of just saying jump higher, do better, you're better than that, or I need more from you. Sometimes you can use that if it's a motivational thing, but especially in practices, like give them an explanation, give them what's going on.
Yeah, I like that. That kind of actually ties in with the one that I was thinking of. Is if you need to explain one thing to one person, do not stop your entire practice to do so.
Correct.
If one person's making one mistake, and this is the problem when coaches are controlling the feeding, right? If the only person who is controlling the feeding or initiating drills is the person who needs to be giving the most information, it's difficult on them to actually stop that practice. So there's 2 solutions there. Number 1, you do not stop a practice or stop your group from training and getting repetitions just to fix one person. You say, Tony, come on over here. You keep repping out the drills, keep feeding them, keep that drill going, but talk to this person and correct them while the drill is still living. Like, don't pause the entire drill. That's actually just 2 things right there. You need to talk to that person individually, keep the drill going, and if you need to talk to them, you can talk and knock balls at the exact same time, right?
Yeah.
If you have an assistant coach, if you're lucky enough to have an assistant coach, yeah, hey Sarah, go take Tony and work on his arm swing on the other net. Boom, and then you just keep going. But there's really no need to stop everybody else from doing their job just to correct one person.
Yeah. And yeah. And if it is, let's say it's a eye sequencing, or it's like, okay, you're doing ball setter, ball hitter, and it's like, okay, like all my outsides can learn from this. Then it's like, okay, keep it quick. But then that's more of a group where you're thinking, okay, all my pin hitters are going to say something or learn something. Then I can maybe say something as a group. That way everybody is on the same page. But if it's just that solo person's left hand not being able to seal the antenna, then you don't need to go around to everybody and say, hey, go seal the antenna. Like, so I'm with that. And the top, to go back to the player driven drills, that's huge. That is huge because like whether it's like a serve, whether it's a down ball, whether it's entering for other like they get reps through that.
Yes.
You're getting reps like that, and you're able to coach. So you got the freedom, and you know what? It might be ugly, a little ugly at first.
Good.
And that's one of those where like grow through it. Yeah, you need this. That's growth. That's literally what growth is.
Yeah, if you need a coach to make the drill pretty or make it work, number one, then the coach is controlling that. And that's not the whole point of the practice. Like they're not going to be able to have the coach make it look good in the game. So you got to figure out that ugly part quick and just let them struggle.
Yep.
Stay out of there. Don't change your feed so that has to be perfect unless you just see confidence going completely through the floor, right? Like, all right, find a way to gather them up and regain that confidence in your players. But you have to embrace and have that conversation. Like, no, it's not, you're not going to look like Phil Dowhauser right now. We're going to get there. Trust me, we're going to get there, and you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel ugly. And in the process of feeling ugly and screwing up, that is where your body and your brain learn. But if you need a coach to make it look good, then you need to get that coach out of there and say, okay, go ahead, keep training ugly, until they can make it pretty. But don't say like, well, we can't even get the first pass, so how are we going to work on hitting? Guess what? You're going to need to pass in the game in order to get to that hit. So you got to start right there. So all these people who work on hitting and they're like, well, we can't even get a pass. Then stop working on hitting, dude. Like,
stop doing it.
What are you doing? That's, man, I see that a lot. I know my libero from George Mason. His name was Graham Shepard, a great libero, but his high school always turned out the top, like another state champions. And he said that the first 2 weeks of their season, every season, they didn't spike a ball over the net. It was passing and setting, passing and setting. And this is a team that went to state championships every year. And it's because I think like guys and people in general, they love the feeling of attempting to spike at full power. There's something like addicting in the human body that like bringing all the force you have and jumping high. You think that that's where the glory is, but you don't realize that the only way to get there is through your pass and set. So that's got to be probably a top 5 advice. If you can't get to the hitting phase, don't work on it. This of course works very different for us on like vacations, because we're not going to grind our players through the 3, 4, 5 week or month process of learning how to pass before we introduce the concepts of sets of attacks. But that's why we have our journal. That's why we have them write everything down. And we say, listen, every skill that you guys learn at this camp is going to take you a few months to really, really hit top notch to get your 80% out of it. So your job here is to write everything down and then go and take a month or take 2 months to work on the one thing that you wrote down. And only then can you move on to the next. Even though we go through every skill in 1 week, we're going to cover all of that. And the goal is to get that all written down, get yourself introduced, get one feeling of it, and then go back home and work on what you need to work on.
Yep. 100%. One thing I think you mentioned before was like building confidence a little bit back there. And I think that's, if we're going to another topic right now, one of the things for coaches is like when to press for growth and struggle and when to press for the confidence or like ready to perform. And it's like,
I like this conversation.
Yeah. So at Florida, the day before or the day of, having a serve and pass, I might be taking a little bit off the serve, maybe adding a little bit of topspin, so it's not floating as much or moving as much. My first time, it was not very good. They're like, "Don't serve so hard." I was like, "All right." And then,
it's just abusing them.
drop, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so that's not what they're talking about." But then finding rhythm in that, and it's like you gotta do, I guess, what works for the team, not always you because you're not the ones playing. So you got to figure out what's going to work for your team and say, hey, is it the whole week? Am I building the confidence? And did we play great on Saturday or this weekend? Or is it just that last practice? Like we practice Tuesday, Thursday, and then play on a Saturday, let's say. Okay, do I need the whole week for this to start revving them up and start getting them in rhythm confidence-wise? Or is it, can I still give them a little push or a little struggle on Tuesday, and then maybe start to build that confidence on Thursday? But you definitely need to play with that line. And the preseason, that's the struggle time. That's the time to go after it. But once you're in season, you gotta find that balance of and that time frame of when am I going to gather this team together, and when are they going to be on the same page in the right direction, going the right direction before they play.
I like that. And I really like that because that is, you take a look at like the Roman armies when the Roman Empire was going, and these guys were fighting battles weekly. I mean, their army was so good and so dominant because they were fighting the most. They had so much war and fight experience that you could have taken any one of their like privates and they could have been a general on any other on any other army just because of experiences. And you want to think like, well, the harder we push, no matter what, this is going to make you better. But it's also a game. It's a sport. So you have to find those little opportunities to give somebody the confidence that they can succeed in that. Rome had a winning streak. So they kept winning battles and they knew they were a part of an army that was doing nonstop winning. Right?
Yep.
So that can be a part of what builds your confidence. And I think you're right. Don't just crush your players and say, you're not getting this, you're not getting this, you're not getting this. Because as soon as you do that, your army feels like a beaten dog. You're just down in the dumps, and then you ask them to show up with energy for their match. Like, you just told us, or we felt, or you caused like how bad we set. Like every goal you set, we couldn't come close to achieving. So we don't know what winning is like. So I think what I would like tag on to what you said is, let's set goals that are achievable. For your players. And if you say, hey, we need to pass 10 perfect free balls in a row, and you're coaching a couple 8-year-olds and it doesn't happen in 45 minutes, then you say, hey, our season goal is 10 perfect free ball passes in a row. But for this one, it's 3. Pick something that they're going to get to, that they're going to struggle, but make sure that it happens. And that goal setting at the right level for your team is important. And if you choose the wrong goal, step back and redo the goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There will be still a sense of achievement. Sometimes we felt that like in the gym or on the court where a goal was set and we didn't reach it. And then maybe it was lowered and then you reached that. And that was kind of a consolation prize, but at least you got through it. You still said like, hey, okay, we did this. And then you keep that first goal somewhere written down. And be like, this is, write that down high in the gym, high in the net, in your player journal, and say, this is where we're going to get. Okay, we're not here yet, but this is where we're going to get. And these are the increments that we're going to do it in. And then you just do little 5 in a row increments. Boom, 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 until you get there. But I've definitely felt that. I did that with my team in Sweden where we wanted to do plus 100, where you dig, set, jump, and hit over the net 100 times in a row. Because I knew the U.S. national team was doing that. I was like, that should be our goal. We got to like 12. But by like middle of the season, we got to 50 in a row, which should have been a win, but I was too much of a hard nose as a coach then to treat it as a win. I kind of wrecked confidence as well.
For sure. And it's like with exchange, I usually start with exchange. It's over the net pepper for those of you, if you're wondering what exchange is. Cooperative, and usually that's one of the very first drills we do for season and preseason. Learn how to talk, learn how to say each other's name, mine and the name. It's more about a team like connection with that drill, because like once you're calling and making plays and doing stuff, the ball just stays up. But if you're quiet and you're this and you're that, you're not going for it, nobody really wants to play the ball. But the very first thing I'm like, let's go for 50. And I got like in my head and I'm like, it's preseason, maybe. I'm like, well, my 12s can do my 12s gotten 40, so you guys can get 60, right? But you got to be realistic for sure. Especially with people coming together for the first time, or if they're high schools, or if they're coming from different areas, let them get to know each other and have more focus on getting to know each other, or building connection than actually having to hit 75 because your other previous team hit 75, So
I would say, the takeaway from that is when you're setting a goal for your team, start at the lowest possible goal you can consider.
Yeah.
And then, go tiny piece by tiny piece forward, because there's that sense of accomplishment. It builds that confidence, and then you're building it, and you never get to the phase where it's like, man, I set that goal too high. Now they know I'm giving them a consolation goal, and they know that they feel that they're not where I want them to be.
Yep.
They definitely feel that, and they lose that confidence. So if you are setting goals, start at 2, coaches.
Yep.
And then boost it from there. Just double that. That's all. And then they'll find that middle ground. 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, 32. That's a very valid goal setting rhythm.
Yeah. It's like adult life, right? Like, set your promises low, like under promise and over deliver.
Yeah.
Like, literally, it makes you feel, if you say, hey, you need to get 5 today, they get 25, they're going home and they're throwing a party. Like, they are thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the best best way to do that, because if you say 25 and they only get 5, now they're reconsidering playing volleyball ever again. And they're like, well, I'm no good at this sport, and I don't really want to grow because, well, I'm not good at it. It's like, oh, you're okay. It's a team drill. But, that's what they're thinking. They're thinking that. Yeah. So I agree. Start low.
I kind of like that. Yeah. And then I like, if you got one of those like pie in the sky goals, I like putting that on the wall of the gym and then doing a little coach wager. Like, I'll shave my head if you guys reach X by the end of the season. Those are always fun for kids, and like little. So I'll jump in the lake if you guys do 100 in a row by end of season. That way they know their grand goal, and they have a big, like, seemingly impossible goal, but maybe it's written up there, so maybe. And then you just push their daily goals little by little. I think that's a great way to do it.
100%. That's awesome.
Nice.
Gotta have a whiteboard, by the way. Gotta have a whiteboard. I love my whiteboard.
It's nice to have stuff to write down, and giving the players their journals, so that they can track their own journey, so they can remind themselves. Especially
one thing we do
over tipping them.
Yeah. One thing we do too is we do like a player, like kind of like your player journal, but we do player check-ins throughout practice. And so you have like a scale. I know you like scales 1 to 10, so we do scales like 1 to 5. Hey, we have an individual goal, and we have a like volleyball goal for the person. We have a team goal for the person, and then you have an individual character trait. And it's like, okay, like, what is your focus on for volleyball? What was our team goal? And you go back and you kind of write down how you're feeling 1 to 5, and then any other notes throughout practice. So you'll have, like, I think it's 3 check-ins. It's a little different when I have longer practices, but it's 3 check-ins. You start at the beginning of the day. Hey, I didn't eat lunch today. My mind's kind of scattered. I don't really know, a 1 with my focus on hitting down the line. And then they can kind of go back and review it and say, oh, you know what? I probably need to eat some lunch, because every time I had lunch, I had a 4 or 5. I was able to focus, and now I'm learning my body, or they're learning their body. And all that data is awesome. So just a quick little idea.
Yeah, every coach should have, notebooks, or at the very least a notes section in a phone for their players. I highly for anybody, I highly recommend going away from phones, because as soon as they open the note section, a notification is going to come on their phone, and they're going to think about who's liking their nonsense, and who's following them, and who said what, and like what email came in from work. The more I live, the more I want to move away from phones.
We use binders, so same idea. We use binder. We let them kind of decorate or customize how they want the front, as long as it says the same word, the team word for the year.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like that has a sense of community and pride, but then it's also custom, so it's personal. And then inside that is, you know, our rule book, our handbook, play calls, um, all the activities, all the character trait activities that we do throughout the weeks,
Like
and then
that.
all the journaling. So
Nice.
I
All
don't
right,
think
Chad.
we.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead. You
No,
don't
I
think
was
we
just saying,
what?
I don't think coaches do enough character like training either. I think we focus on volleyball a lot, and I think touching the character side, hey, accountability, hey, um, honesty, like these things, like we all think like they learn these words, and it's kind of like a cliche dictionary. But how
Mm.
does that apply in a drill when you're saying, hey, I hit my target of 8? Like, is that being honest? Like, and like training that, and it's showing them videos and showing them a path or showing them examples. Um, I think it can go a really long way with coaching instead of just focusing on X's and O's every single time. I think you start to learn them and develop a trust or a different level of insight with your players when you're focused on the actual human as well. So,
I could not agree more with that. I had a coach who just moved on from a very prestigious position, and another school picked him up. He was hired for his ability to change and create culture,
mhm,
wasn't given the opportunity to do that. Um, and everything about this man is culture. Like,
mhm.
how do you motivate? How do you keep people motivated? How do you keep them accountable? He's the guy that will text you about how much he's squatting just to make sure that you're squatting. You know,
Yeah.
he'll send those like videos to the friends, not to say, "Look how much I'm squatting." He's sending them to say, "Did you get your squats in today?" You know,
Yeah.
he's that type of guy, and people think that culture is just something that you talk about or that it's there, and this is something else that we talk about at our clinics a lot. You have to create actively, piece by piece, build your environment and your culture.
Yep.
And it comes through actions, it comes through rewards that are just as strong from the cultural side of it, as they are from the physical performance side of it. You know, did
Yep.
you show up? Did you bring the team something today? When everybody was cleaning, were you the first one to step up and start cleaning along with the team? You know, there has to be, if you have a stat board in your gym, weight room, beach court, whatever, if you have a stat board, you damn well better have a person board, you know, that
Yeah.
shows, you know, number of times that this person cleaned up their weights, picked up somebody else's weights, fixed a squat rack where the weights were uh, out of order so that it's
Yeah.
easier for somebody else. And people don't stat that. And that's what really counts in terms of
Yeah.
long term winning and enjoyment. If you don't
Yeah.
create that culture, you're going to be a miserable coach. Your players are going to be miserable. Then that's going to create miserable parents and a culture around you. Like, there has to be an active hand in building that the people, especially if you call yourself a coach, you're a leader. That's your
Yeah.
position. So it's time to lead the world.
Yeah. I agree, man. I agree. I think, like I said, we have one a week that you're focused on, and that gives them the sole like one. So it's not like, hey, here's 15 things you need to work on, but it's
Mm.
like honesty is one. So all week they're talking about honesty, or all week they were watching reviews and all that stuff. So it's pretty cool though. I agree. I think building character, man.
I
Because if
like
you
that.
build that character, then you're gonna have a machine that's gonna be flowing. You're gonna have a machine that's gonna be well oiled. You know, you don't. You got the little kinks. You got a bolt missing here. You got this, that. It's, you know, whatever it needs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and that culture will attract the people that you want to attract.
Ooh, yeah, it will.
Mhm.
Energy is magnetic.
Hell yeah. All right, man. Well, we usually wrap this up with maybe 5 minutes of Q&A from our audience. So I will
Cool.
start from the top. And if you are here live, this is our Q&A session for live people. And let's get it rocking. Diana Marquez says, hello. What's up, Diana? Good to see you back. Mark Goodkin, can the girls take turns standing on the other side of the court and shag balls? Yeah, I think we went over that where, yes, they can take turns shagging and they should if that's your only hope. If you've got a giant gym and you can swing the 80, $150 and get a net that self shags so you don't have to constantly like run around 100-yard gym to shag, you're going to save yourself some time. So find systems, find methods that allow you to keep the balls close, or they somehow get recycled, whether it's by a digger, or like we said, a parent who can
Wall.
get there. A wall is nice. Yeah, aiming.
Yeah.
If you're on the beach and you want to do hitting practice, learn to hit into the wind so that you don't
Yeah.
have to chase the ball 80 yards. I mean, I think most of us kind of do that naturally once you realize that the first one's going half a mile down the beach. But a little net setup is really good. And then, yes, a shagging system where one group is shagging for 3 minutes. And that's something that we've moved towards completely. Is you don't just like hit once and then you rotate. You guys, you're shagging for the next 3 minutes. You guys, you're hitting for the next 3 minutes. You guys are setting for the next 3 minutes. I will rotate you as the coach. I want more coaches. I want them to get away from reps. Because when you say, hey, everybody pass to yourself 15 times or 20 times, players end up doing the reps and then sitting there and holding it because that's the assignment that you gave them. So they don't expect that they have to do more.
Yeah.
But nobody can keep track of time in their own head. So
Yeah.
if you keep saying, all right, 30 more seconds, and I'm notorious for 1 more minute, that ends up becoming 5 more minutes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
people
Oh,
are,
yeah.
no one stops. They just keep repping, and that's what you want. So my biggest recommendation for coaching is always have a watch and do drills for time so that you can control it how you want to control it. Or if you're somebody who like really wants to get through and you're a big time planner, then you can get through absolutely everything you really wanted to get through, and then that becomes measurable too. So
Yeah.
So yeah, that's mine for that. Mark Goodkin, has coaching style, I'll let you answer this one, Chad. Has coaching style changed over time? One criticism is that our kids have become too coddled and that parents and teachers need to be softer, quote unquote, with them. So do you think our coaching style in the US or in the world has changed over time?
I think over time, 100%. Like you can't say that in the 60s or 70s, 80s that was different. I mean, look at some of those players and coaches. And it's just like if you go back to vintage videos, it's like all fire, like all passion, like what are you doing, like that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's. I understand the choice of words saying softer. I think it's. I don't know if it's softer is a good word though. I think it's maybe it's more detailed. You're trying to figure out the details, and yeah, there's a couple more. Obstacles is not the good word either. There's a couple more. There's a different path right now to getting to reach your player, and it like we talked about earlier. It's making them feel comfortable. If you make them feel comfortable and you yell, they're still going to be okay. Like that's not the issue.
That's a great point. Yelling does not equal discomfort.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
I have three. Let's say I have 3 people on my team, and they're really close to me, or they feel safe with me, and some other 3 don't. And if I yell all the same, 3 are going to be happy or normal, and 3 are going to feel not so normal. So just building that trust, man, and that goes a long way. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
like
softer stuff.
Ray at camps, like he knows when I'm tough on him, that like he knows that I'm smiling on the inside and that I'm rooting for him. If somebody doesn't know that you're rooting for them yet, and then you start like yelling right away, it's a tough way to start. People need to trust that you are on their side and that you're working to get them there. And that requires some extra talking. I think like Miracle on Ice, the USA hockey team, that guy hammered his team.
Yeah.
But once they realized that they bonded together, and then he had their back. And there's a few cases in that movie where he showed that he had their back. He didn't actively show it to them, but they discovered it. Then they're like, oh, he really wants this for us. It's not for him. And that's a big point. And I think your point too, yelling does not equal bad. Yelling does not equal discomfort. It's helping people to explain where you are and what comfortable is for your team culture, and for your style. And what you are comfortable with as a coach might not be what every player on your team is comfortable with. And a great coach discovers that for each person that they're leading. And you got to figure that out. And every now and then test it.
Yep.
And if you step too far in the wrong direction, have the conversation. Don't just say, oh, that was a bad step. Go to that person, be the bigger leader and say, hey, I was tough on you because of this, but if you don't like when I yell at you, or you don't like that I have an increased tone of voice, let's find another way. How do you best accept criticism? Or how do you want me to help you?
And now that we're talking here, with that, it's like, make sure you do it individually, because as a group, a lot of people will not say what's going on. If you take your time, number one, they appreciate you allowing it to be under the radar, so to speak, but coming to them personally, instead of, if I go up to the whole group of 12 athletes and say, hey, what's everybody's feeling? Everybody will be quiet. Hey, what do we need to change? Everyone's quiet. I go up in a water break and I say, hey, what do you think's going on? Like, what? Oh, I think blah, blah, blah. She's worried about this, or he's worried about that. Like, there's going to be a conversation there, and they're going to have a little bit more trust because you're coming to them, and they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or they don't want to say something wrong in front of the group. So definitely break it down individually.
Yeah, there was, even on our college team, some of us wanted our coach to be harder. Some of us wanted softer, and there will be divisions in your team.
Yeah.
Not every athlete understands how and that's why the morning talks, as soon as you enter the gym, before you enter the gym, having the conversations with individuals, checking in and saying, how are you doing today? And you cannot stop as a coach at how are you doing? You need to say, hey, how's that knee? I know it was bugging you. How did that test go? How, I know you were going through that transition, whether you're going to be promoted or not. How's that going? That gives you insight into how you can treat them that day and how you can maximize their performance.
And
right?
that you care.
Yeah, and that you care. You got to look at it like it's a, I don't know, like it's a pan or something. Like you can touch a hot pan differently than you can touch a cold pan. I know that's a terrible metaphor, but you have to measure their temperature, and you have to know what's going on so that you know how to handle them. So maybe it is a pretty good metaphor.
That's a really good metaphor, actually.
Yeah. So the check-ins before practice, got to do it. All right. The next one from Coach Selena McBride. She says, agreed that our culture requires us now to sandwich our point to our players. No other comment. Mark also asks, what do you think about a coach who has a group of 20 people, dividing them into 2 to 3 groups for drills based on their skill levels?
Does it say beach or indoor, by the way?
No.
Assuming beach.
Yeah, we're mainly beach, but we have a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
For me, a coach selecting who belongs where, that does create a lot of tension. But people have to understand where they stand. And guys and girls work very, very differently. And I'm going by the psychology and the psychologists that I've learned from, and the coaches that I've learned from. So if this gets on anybody's case, I apologize in advance for it not being nice or whatever. Girls and guys are different, right? So For girls, if you have them compete often and you have them try to tear each other down, a lot of times for the general average team, that doesn't work great when you set a nonstop competitive environment. One of the things that
Mhm.
USA Volleyball teaches is women need to bond to battle. So they need to bond with each other and know that they have each other's backs and have their talks and connect with each other emotionally before they're going to uh, go to battle with and for each other. They need to know that they have that support. Guys, in a lot of situations, the average typical, statistic guy doesn't doesn't kind of have respect for somebody's care or for somebody next to them until they've had it out and until they've sorted out their position with each other. So that the language is, guys need to battle to bond. Like, we
Mhm.
have to have been through a war with each other before we, you know, uh, respect each other in in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And maybe that's against evolution. Maybe we're a completely devolved species, but uh, you see it all the time in movies and TV. Like, two guys knock each other out, and then they sit down and they have a beer with each other.
Yeah.
you know, um, but they have to see. Guys need to see that respect of hard work. Of, you're going to outwork me. You're going to perform against me. You're going to hold me accountable, and then we kind of develop a little bit more closeness. And that's how we have to go through it. We have to go through a war with each other. So,
Yeah.
um, so to divide groups in certain ways, or to have like a team of girls pick each other's teams, that I don't think would go over as well as having guys pick teams.
Yeah.
I know that I got picked last in college. My first year, I got picked last in college, and I was like, "What? You all think that Grammet is better than me?" And he was like first pick, and I was last pick, and I couldn't believe it because I was comparing myself to him, and they all showed me with their picks like where I stood. And to me, I took that as, all right, that's the gauntlet. I'm going to get picked before Grammet by by the middle of this year. Uh, but I didn't hold on to that as, man, Hudson picked him. Now I hate Hudson. That has a tendency to happen in a group of female players, where there might be one pick or one side of it, and you say like, there's something that's held onto more emotionally in that time.
Yeah.
So I don't think that, you got to be careful with that group selection, and there has to be a lot more talking that goes into it, and you have to figure that out first. So, I know I didn't say that right or completely and fully educated on this situation, but that's from the schools that I've learned from. That's how you have to approach it, with care and with tact.
Yep.
So, for Todd, how did I meet Chad? Todd, how did we meet? Was it gold medal? Was it just through indoor nationals volleyball? I don't know.
Mark. Yeah, because you graduated George Mason a year before Brandon, right? Or 2 years?
Yeah, maybe two,
Two
maybe three.
years. So okay, so you're older. Uh, you're an old guy, and I played Brandon his senior year from Leeds McRae, 2 gold and yellow schools. We did lose in 3, but I had 21 kills in 3 sets, so it was a good outing. Funny story. And then we finally met at Open Nationals at
Okay, yeah,
Louisville.
nice.
I wanted to go to George Mason, by the way.
You should have.
I was trying to, so I didn't really know. So I started late with volleyball, I was like 17. And then I went to Leeds McRae freshman year, sophomore year, and I was going to transfer because I started getting decent. I lost a lot of weight and started playing well. And I just emailed the head coach and I was like, "Oh, like, what, you think you can take me on?" Blah, blah, blah. Not knowing that I couldn't do that. Like, I had to get a release and I had to get
Yeah.
all this. So I didn't hear back, and I'm like, "Well, I guess I'm staying at Leeds McRae." But I wanted so bad to go to George Mason.
Don't feel bad. It took me something like 6 emails to get a response from him, and then I transferred in like August. So,
There you go.
all right. Chantel says, I tend to struggle. Hi, Chantel. Chantel from camp. I tend to struggle with measurement in our sport. What tools do you guys use and recommend to measure our skill level increase or decrease outside of the score and that looks better from our coach? Chantel, you've been through this. Check out the Better at Beach levels. So if you guys are at home and you're wondering kind of where you stand skillfully, check out betteratbeach.com/level 2 test. Level the number 2 test. That will give you a written and a physical, a video performance evaluation that you can take yourself through. Once you pass that, or if you fail it, the system will move you on to level 3 tests and level 4 tests and level 5 tests. So we have these videos up for you. We have the knowledge test up for you. So I recommend that all of you try it out. See if you can answer all the volleyball questions correctly and see if you can do the skills on the videos that we put our camp players through so that you can assess your own level. Okay. betteratbeach.com/level, the number 2 test, level 2 test. And that will be a great start to knowing where you stand as far as goals, skills, performance, etc. Okay. Neil Lyons says that Chad is the man. Love you, Neil.
Love you, Neil.
That's Neil from camp as well.
My guy.
All these campers hanging out with us. Yeah. He's a good dude. Just started volleyball recently, and man, he came a long way. Ooh, he came a long way between his first camp and his second camp.
I was going to say, he had 2 camps, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Coach Selena Bride, as a coach, building the connection through interpersonal communication one-on-one will be life-changing for our athletes, and they will carry that forward. 100% agree with you, Coach Selena McBride. That's 100%. The one-on-one is what counts, not you standing in front of a group, but you talking to somebody one-on-one with no one else around. That's where you can develop that bond. You have to be careful with it now as juniors, collegiate, high school, about what one-on-one means or the optics or the visuals with it. But the one-on-one conversations will hold so much meaning. Go ahead, Chad. You said something.
I was just going to say, what's going to be funny too, is especially for me, if we got juniors, sometimes they don't want to talk, right? It is hilarious, or I shouldn't say hilarious. It is actually really cool. That's a better phrase. To when you start talking individually, and then you start seeing them become like they come into their own voice in front of the group because you did that. So at first, a lot of people are very quiet and timid in that, and all of a sudden you start talking to them individually and you walk them through this process. They start building that confidence, but then they're able to do that in front of the group. You know what I'm saying? It's really cool.
Right. Like it's okay to express yourself here. It's okay to be who you want to be.
Beginning of the year, it's always like that. It's like nobody will talk, nobody will do anything. They're worried about this, that. And then before you know it, they're like, hey, you talk to them individually and they build their confidence on their own.
Yeah.
And then they start getting a little bit more active with expressing things. And then people get further and then there's better connections and it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah. We conquer that at camps, clinics, and our classes by making sure that everybody knows each other's names. That's the first step. So if you guys are somebody who runs like local classes, local camps, I know it sounds, to me, it seemed childish in the beginning, but everybody learning everybody's names, however you have to do it, either by switching partners quickly or by doing the whole circle thing with a superlative and then your name, or an adjective and then your name, that will at least allow people to talk to each other, because instead of looking across the court and going, they kind of point, they get shy because they forgot a name, and then they don't say anything. And then nobody says anything. The energy of that practice will be completely different than if everybody knows everybody's names. So as a coach for groups, adults, people who are just coming together, if you run camps or clinics, your number one priority should be getting everybody to know each other's names. And it sounds crazy, but trust me, the rest of your day will be much better as soon as that happens. Chad, Todd said that you will break forearms if you play him in reverse co-ed. You might. Yeah, watch out for the wrist away. Rick says, I like this quote. Girls need to feel good about themselves to play well. Guys need to play well in order to feel good. Kind of,
Yep,
sometimes.
same lines. Yeah, same
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah, similar. I know that there have been times when I have not been playing well, and I said, "Man, something about my skill just isn't here. How do I 2x the people around me?" So I was like, "I'm playing like crap, and I know I can't get this done, but you know who can? The guy next to me, the other 5 guys around me. So I'm just going to make them feel like gods and just keep the energy up and do that." I literally, I think, pat my own back, but I think I changed the course of an entire match at nationals without touching a ball.
Yep.
Just by saying, "Dude, let me get in there. I'll play defensive specialist. Like, put me as a barrow. I don't need to pass or anything, but like, I'll get these guys going." And that emotional switch, boom! It like woke everybody up, give them a little bit of confidence, and I was there. So you can change
Mm-hmm.
the game without skills. Chantel said that she was looking for the intangibles beyond structured reps. Um, Chantel, still don't know what you're asking for in terms of uh, measuring skill level increase or decrease outside the score. And
Intangible measurables.
yeah, Chantel, maybe we should have a conversation in the mastery group so we can figure it out, and we can have a talk with Joe and Chad as well. But I'd love to answer that for you privately. So just send us a message by what you mean. All right, Chad. Thanks for jumping on, man. This is a long one, longer than
Of
we've ever done.
course. That's all right. We're going to turn into Joe Rogan.
One day, it's coming. Small business after this. I got a couple more months of podcasting about volleyball, and then it's all going to be small business for entrepreneur athletes, where I'm going to have conversations with people who have turned their sport into they've turned their sport passion into their career. And those are the conversations that I'm going to have. So I'm looking forward to talking to all those people.
That's awesome.
And then maybe you, maybe Joe, maybe Brandon will take over the full role of the Better at Beach Volleyball podcast. But that's what's down the pipeline. Oh,
all right.
Guys, make sure that you follow Chad I'm going to pop his Instagram up here, Chatty Daddy. We spell it CH_ADDY, Daddy, DADDY, CH_ Daddy. It's Chad Mercado. He's on Instagram. He's also got a company coming up in Florida called Take Off, where he will be training physically, mentally, spiritually, volleyball players, indoor volleyball players. And that's happening in Florida. Is there anything you want to mention about that? Should anybody follow Take Off?
Yeah, Take Off Training Academy. It's Instagram is TOTAFL, TOTA, Florida. It'll pop up, but we do some tips and tricks and on court, inside the gym, as well as try to promote some of our athletes to get ready to get recruited. It's all college prep, so getting high school kids ready to go, giving them the knowledge, the skills, and the resources to step on from senior year in high school, step on the college court, and be ready to play and ready to start.
Nice. Love it. Good luck with that. Can't wait to help out and see where it goes. And Chad's also joined us part-time as a Better at Beach kind of 1099/employee, and looking forward to getting everything we can get out of him. He's a motivational guy, and just a great dude. So when you guys see him in our Facebook group and on our YouTube and on our channels, you know where it's coming from. If you guys are still here for this coaching lesson, if you're looking for beach volleyball practice plans, we have 53 beach volleyball practice plans set up, a complete 2-hour, completely laid out for you. You can check that out at betteratbeach.com/practice plans. They are written, they are timed, they are separated by skill, whatever you want to work on. And we have video recordings of the drills so that you cannot get confused. So if you want to take all of the work out of practice planning and preparing for a practice, we have it set up for you. Betteratbeach.com/practice plans. You want to work on passing, open the first passing practice plans, just follow the videos and you are set. All you have to do is coach your players. We're taking the pain out of practice planning. And currently, right now, you guys are here live. Our setting course is getting going. We already have people who are posting their setting testing. So basically we do pre-testing where people record their hand rhythm and their bump rhythm for beach volleyball setting. And we do before and after videos, and we take them through basically a 30-day course, and we give you the drills that you need to do every single day. We give you the tutorials for how, where, and what to set, and we give you video feedback in the Facebook group. So as soon as you post your videos to our private members only Facebook group, you are going to get coached by professional athletes, national champions, national team coaches. We really invite you to that. Currently, it is only $39 a month. You get every course that we have included with that. The group is currently working as a group on setting, but if you want to dive in and work on attacking or work on passing, you can go ahead and do that. It's all under the same membership, along with, of course, our 60-day max vertical jump workout program, which flat out gets results. If you want to add inches to your vertical, you can check that out. But all of those you can get at betteratbeach.com/coaching. Right now, we're going through the setting. So if you want to perfect your setting before this season starts, go grab it, betteratbeach.com/coaching. And if you guys ever have any questions about the courses, offerings, the coaching that we do, you can go ahead and you shoot us a message. We'll be happy to hear from you. And you'll be seeing a lot of posts on our Facebook group and on our Instagram about the setting course coming up. So it is never too late to join. And we would love to work with you and see what you can do and how far your game can get. All right, Chad, we always sign off by saying, cool, man, see you later. And we say, see you on the sand. So, Chad,
see you on the sand.
Even though I'll see you in my living room in 20 seconds, I'll see you on the sand.
See you on the sand, brother. Let's get better.
Holla.